Hello, my name is Noah. Soon, I will turn 20. Not that old, you could say. But sometimes I think that over 100 years have passed since the days when I was 17, and not just 2. My life has changed so drastically. And it's not only because I now have to walk with a cane. Actually, it feels more like I was born again. Well, at least I had to study to walk again. So I was 17 and I had just entered college. By looking at me, at an ordinary guy, none of my new friends would have thought that my family was somehow different from the vast majority of other families. However, they were very different. My parents were, and I think they will, never change. They were people with very strict views, like they came straight from somewhere in the Middle Ages. They were literally obsessed with issues of morality and sin. I think you understand what I'm talking about. But I think that nowadays, it's pretty difficult to protect a child from information unless you keep them in the cellar. As for me, I grew up as an inquisitive child. And if I did not get any answers to my questions apart from, "It's a sin to talk about that," well, I searched for the answers in books. Maybe that was the way I realized pretty early that I did not share the restricted view of my parents. They simply did not suit me. I wanted to lead the normal life of a modern guy. But because I had not had the opportunity to live separately from my folks with their outdated notions about the world, I would have to hide a lot from them. In other words, I would have to lie to them. Oh no, don't start imagining something strange or dirty, please. I'm talking about the simplest things, like going to see a sci-fi or horror movie, or going to a beach party with friends, even just to wear a pair of shorts and a sleeveless t-shirt on a hot day. My parents sincerely considered it sinful and unacceptable. So when I started going out with Kathy, I didn't even consider telling my parents about it. In this case, it would have been easier to admit that I was gay. Why? Because my parents knew Kathy very well, even though they had never met her in person. But they were the ones who collected signatures in favor of expelling Kathy from the school where I too was going. According to their opinion, her very existence was a disgusting example to other children. The thing was that Kathy got pregnant at the age of 16, and even though she lost her baby, everybody in the neighborhood found out about her pregnancy. Some people took the whole situation with humor, others sympathized with it, but in general, nobody perceived it as something worth a lot of attention, except for my parents. Of course, they did not succeed in expelling Kathy from school. But I had a really hard time convincing them that I should not change schools during my last year before graduation because of this black sheep. I solemnly vowed that I would resist Kathy's sinful influence with all the strength I had. Actually, I can hardly restrain my laughter while talking about this. I didn't know her at all then. She was a year younger than me, and I only caught a glimpse of her several times. That was it. But it turned out that I violated my oath as much as was humanly possible. One day, students from different years of study at our school went on an excursion, and I ended up with Kathy sitting next to me on the school bus. We talked, and a week later, we began to go out together. I fell in love with her, head over heels. Usually, girls fear their parents and go on secret dates more often than guys, but with us, it was different. I had to come up with one lie after another just so I could see Kathy. And when summer came, it became almost unbearable for me. I wanted to be with her every minute. And you know what? I found a way to. The parents of one of my distant cousins left for a long European vacation and hoped that their son would look after their house, dogs, and flowers as they traveled. They also owned a horse farm, but there was no problem with it since several stable workers looked after the horses. Only the house required attention. But my cousin, who was my age, had absolutely no desire to be stuck on some farm for 2 months. So he mumbled something about having to pass his college admissions test and recommended that they ask me to look after the house instead. And, holy Lord, they agreed. I told my parents that I wanted to spend my summer working hard on a ranch, and they willingly let me go, away from the temptations of the big city. And I went away from them, taking with me my biggest temptation ever, my Kathy. Now, when I think about those days, I envy myself. All the housework, like taking care of the house, the dogs, and the flowers, did not take much time at all. So we spent days walking around the forest and the fields. We fished in a river nearby and watched movies in the evenings. There was a home theater on the ranch. We even started helping out in the stables. It turned out that Kathy took horseback riding lessons when she was a kid, and she adored horses. I also fell in love with them, and several times we went riding on a couple of old, calm ponies. But one day I decided to orchestrate a surprise for Kathy. Well, to be honest, I wanted to show off a bit. So I told her to meet me at our favorite place and quickly rushed to the stable, alone, without telling her anything about what I had in mind. I chose a pair of horses to my taste, saddled them, and rode to the appointed place on horseback, and took another horse for Kathy, tying its reins to my saddle. I only had a couple of miles to go, guys. The horses that I chose were, of course, the most beautiful, but they were also young and nervous, and they did not obey me at all. And when the horse that I tied to my saddle broke free and ran along the dusty road, my horse followed it, ignoring my attempts to stop it. After a few seconds of frantic racing, I could not hold on to my saddle any longer. The last thought that I remembered was how stupid it all turned out to be when the blow from the fall literally knocked all the breath out of me, and I lost all consciousness from the terrible pain. But when I woke up, there was no pain. All I saw was my dear Kathy's face. Apparently, she came to meet me and somehow found me. She was pale and scared. I tried to say that everything was fine with me and I want to get up, but I could neither talk nor walk. There was only stupid wheezing coming from my mouth, and my body would simply not obey me. When I arrived at the hospital, the scanning confirmed what we were both afraid to think about. My spine was damaged. The doctors could not guarantee that I would ever walk again. It all depended not only on the operation, but also on how the rehabilitation period would go. And this period was going to be long and difficult. And all this time in the hospital, Kathy was by my side. I saw how hard she tried to stay calm, although she was terribly scared and shocked by everything that had happened. But she kept cheering me up with every word, every look, and every touch. And what about my parents? You know, it was actually funny that all this time I had never once even thought of them. So when they came, I just thought something like, "Damn, how did they even get here?" But of course they were informed, and of course they came to the hospital. Do you think they came to support me? Not at all. When they found out that instead of working hard on the ranch, I was enjoying myself, as they put it, living there in idleness, and even with that very fallen woman, they literally went crazy. They said that my paralysis below my waist was retribution for my sins, and treatment was a sinful attempt to get rid of what they thought was a fair punishment. They talked and talked and, I had lived with them all my life, and I thought that I had gotten used to this kind of life, doing what I wanted, but never sharing it with my folks because it would have caused nothing but a conflict. But I still lived with them. They gave me shelter and the illusion of a warm family. But during that day, when I was lying there, completely helpless, I could not stand it. I called them crazy fanatics, cruel and narrow-minded. And even though my voice was weak and hoarse, they heard and understood me perfectly. They left, cursing me, leaving me paralyzed. But Kathy stayed with me. Can you imagine what a young girl might experience when taking care of a bedridden patient? She was courting me. Together with her, I went through all the pain and despair of rehabilitation. And it's only thanks to her that I can walk again. Yes, sometimes I feel very insecure, and I still need a cane, but I know that someday I will walk again. You might ask if I ever returned to my parents' home. I have not. I have another family now. The family who accepted me as if I was their own flesh and blood. And with the help of these people, my life became whole. There's no need to lie or hide anything. You might have guessed that I live with Kathy's family now. When we got married, I took her last name. And our baby, who is due to be born in a few months, will also have Kathy's last name. And I am very sorry that Kathy had such a hard time with me. But I do not regret what happened with me. This is a high price to pay for growing up. But if I hadn't paid it, perhaps I would still live like a little boy hiding a torn shirt from his parents, scared to be left without any dinner as my punishment. Thank you for listening to my story. Like and watch the other videos on this channel.